Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting and inspiring episode of the Inspired Life Vancouver, where we bring you locals who are excelling in their fields and making a difference. Currently, we are here at an amazing award-winning photographer's studio who also happens to be a dear friend. His client list includes British Vogue, Georgia Straight, Decibel magazine. Lately, he's been flying around North America, shooting different magazine covers and musicians. I'm talking about one of Vancouver's #1 headshot photographers, Shimon Karmel. Welcome.
Well, that's quite an intro. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, of course.
And I specifically requested, Shimon has like 50 different backdrops here, and I said I wanted pink. So thanks for putting that up.
Yeah. No problem.
So you've been jet setting quite a bit for the last year and a half. Shooting magazine covers, like different. You're really into metal.
Yeah. That's mostly what it's been since the pandemic ended. I had the opportunity to go to a few different cities. I was in Detroit and Cleveland, and Philadelphia, Portland, Winnipeg in the past year, and I was just doing decibel covers and working with bands, and it's been a lot of fun.
How did that come about? I know you're personally really passionate about metal music, but how did this come about? Because going from headshots and shooting in studio to flying and doing that, and especially post-COVID, how exciting!
Well, I'd had a relationship with that particular publication for about a decade. I have been shooting for them on and off it's been about 10 years. So I've done about a dozen covers for them now, and I just had the opportunity. I kind of asked for more covers, and they happily gave them to me, and I got to go to some different cities and do it, and
And feel like a rock star yourself. That's very exciting.
A little bit, yeah.
Yes, you can fly me and pay me, and I will shoot these covers. Amazing.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Well, with all of our guests, one of the things I love to do is to hit rewind and ask about their journey, how they got started. What was the inspiration behind following this path? And, of course, I know you personally, and you trained as an actor, and then as a hairstylist, and then ending up on the other side of the lens. So tell us about that.
Well, right out of high school, I did about 2 years of acting training, thinking that was sort of the path I wanted to go. I was passionate about it, but I think I found I didn't quite have the right personality for it. I was young, and when you're a teenager, you don't really know yourself. So I knew I wanted to work in media, work in film, TV. So of course, to my brain at the time, being an actor was sort of what I was seeing, and I sort of thought, well, I'll do that. And I did a couple years of training, and I think I was a decent actor, but I don't think I really have the personality to deal with the business side of it. So I ended up taking film production right after I did my acting training, and I did about a year of film production, and this would have been when I was about 20, 21. And I found also with film production, I didn't really care for the hours and the lifestyle. I did some gripping, I did some PAing, just entry-level stuff on film sets, and it was cool, but those 16-hour days, and it was a little militant for my taste. So I decided I just kind of wanted to do my own thing, and photography just sort of made the most sense because it was still related. I could still work with actors, I could still work with lighting and work with equipment and create something visual, but I could just do it completely by myself. So I just very slowly started building a portfolio. I got a half decent camera and a couple lights, and I just started shooting friends and family and anyone that was kind of willing to let me shoot them. And I didn't really necessarily think I'd be able to make a living at it. So while I was kind of working on a portfolio, I decided I'd go and train as a hairdresser, because I figured I could have that as a day job and continue
And
building
you could shoot them and do the hair.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I did think of the things as being related, and so yeah, I did the hair thing. I did it for a couple of years, but then I ended up being able to make a living as a photographer after just a couple of years. I was shooting sort of headshots and stuff on the weekend over in Victoria, and yeah, it just kind of got busy enough that I could kind of just stop doing the hair thing and just focus on photography. And I was more passionate about photography. I was an okay hairdresser, but it wasn't like I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like a great passion like film and photography was. So no, I transitioned full time as a photographer about 2009. And I mean, it was humble beginnings, but I was managing to pay my rent and sort of make a living.
And that's around when we originally met, right?
Yeah, I think we met like 2010.
Like a breast cancer campaign, 2010.
Yeah, that would have been like 2010-ish.
Okay. Yeah,
so I'd only been back here about a year. And I was just, slowly but surely. I had some breaks, like, there were people in the industry here that I had known from film school that kind of, they gave me some breaks and helped me along a little bit. And it just very slowly just kind of built into something. And, and eventually I was able to get my own studio space.
Which is great. This is really fantastic at the Arc. And now one thing that's standing out to me is you mentioned how you wanted to work with actors and light. Now, growing up, for me, for example, I grew up in Pakistan watching classic TNT, MGM movies like Doris Day and, like back in the day, Fred Astaire, Marilyn Monroe. I grew up on those movies, and that's how I learned English. And also the passion for entertainment and film and television really got instilled inside of me. And I find that for a lot of people, especially who are perhaps not from North America, when I hear them and they're a director, producer, or an actor, they often say this is how they got into it as well. Do you have a childhood like that you grew up and you were really passionate about cinema?
Oh yeah, I fortunately had two parents that were both, and a grandfather that were into film. And so we were introduced to pretty good stuff at an early age. Like I have early memories even of like Charlie Chaplin and Star Wars, all this fantasy stuff. I mean, that was around. We didn't grow up with a lot of TV. We were living over in Gambier Island, and we didn't have cable or anything. So it was a lot of renting VHS and yeah, we watched a lot of classic movies and I just really took to it. I mean, I remember watching like E.T. like 4 times in a row, and I was like 6 or 7.
I can relate to that about E.T. and also Exorcist with my brothers.
I wouldn't have been allowed to watch Exorcist.
Okay. This may scare some people, but I've seen Exorcist at least 50 times and read the book.
I've seen Blade Runner probably 50 times. That's probably my favorite. But
I see your poster upstairs.
Yeah. Huge Blade Runner fan. But yeah, we did grow up with lots of film around, and it was just something I really took to. I think me and my brother were just really into movies. And I mean, I still am. I probably watch a little less now because I just don't have as much time. But in high school, I mean, there was a video rental by my
I miss those days, video rentals. I miss going to the stores and having, that conversation with the people. It's like, hey, did you watch that movie? What did you think? I have another recommendation for you. I miss even the cases, like touching them.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I love our digital platforms and all the options we have available. And, we get to do content like this, which I'm so grateful and passionate about. But I miss those days, man.
Yeah, so there was a video rental right next to my high school, and you could rent old movies for 49 cents for, a day. So I just rent one every day. It was 49 cents. And I would just go and, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to watch all the Robert De Niro movies. I'm going to watch all the Al Pacino movies, and I just rent them all and just, or I just watch all the Spielberg movies or, So that was kind of my high school. I mean, I probably should have been doing homework, but no, I pretty much watched a film a day, probably, all through high school. And then well into my 20s too.
It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about exactly, I forget whom, but this person had found a lot of success as an artist. And I wish I could remember their name right now because I'm always listening to podcasts when I'm cleaning my home and such. And this person did so poorly in school, and they dropped out from high school, but then so smart and so successful. And it's fascinating that, you know, perhaps if your brain isn't working in math, or I'm not saying to the kids to drop out of high school, but if you don't necessarily work in something in particular, and then, you know, you put your energy into the arts, and it sounds like really passionate about working with actors, because you are a fantastic photographer. I must say, Shimon has photographed me several times. And one of the things I noticed when working with you behind the camera, how you work really quick. You're in there. You're more than a photographer. You're like a director. And you're able to help bring out different sides of people's personalities, you know, through color. So not just photographing them, but using different backgrounds and colors. Tell me about that process of when you're shooting all these different people. Like, you probably photographed all of the Vancouver actors here.
A lot. I mean, I've photographed probably a few thousand at this point. Yeah, I mean, as far as directing actors go, I think that's just practice. That's just sort of understanding where they're coming from, and having had some acting training myself, that certainly helped to sort of understand the language. But I sort of treat it like I would treat, it's kind of like coaching, you know, you're just seeing where people are holding the tension in their body and sort of just getting them to relax with a lot of positive reinforcement. And I find that I work fast because it doesn't give you time to think about it too much. You don't have time to sort of get in your head and sort of get uncomfortable. I find if you just kind of bang along, shoot, give lots of encouragement, people just kind of they just kind of drop their guard, and they just tend to get more comfortable. Whereas if you sort of are really slow and really meticulous about everything, I mean, that may work for some people, but I find it tends to make people a little more stiff, a little less comfortable. So I've just found that's what works for me, and I just like to give people lots of options. So, you know, with the 2 or 3 hours we have in a session, I want to get as much in there as we possibly can. So, you know, have a lot of options, you know, and then if one thing doesn't work or something, it's no big deal because you got 6 or 7 other options. So, you know, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and very well said. I love the fact that you have that acting training, you know, because that was your first passion, wanting to perhaps pursue this path. Like, even for me as a performer, even though I have been in front of the camera for so many years, I've had to develop other skills that are related to my field, yet at the same time take me behind the lens that allow me that option to earn a living doing other things. So, for example, part of that is also styling. And then when I do work with people who are talent, one of the things they say is, wow, like, you're really in there, like, you really, really care. And I think that's the feeling that I get from you. Sometimes I don't even, when you photograph me, sometimes I can't even tell I'm holding tension in my body, and you'll be like, I mean, these are acting exercises. Like, I'm sure you can't really say this to a lawyer if you're photographing a lawyer or some exec. Okay, shake your body and like go like you know, different exercises. You do?
Yeah, I do, but I mean, I do it myself.
Yeah.
So I don't ask people to do things that I'll do it with them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't say, okay, hey, do this silly thing, and I'm just gonna stand here and laugh.
Yeah.
Like, I do it with them. You know, I usually make much
so
more.
So they don't feel like they're alone in this thing.
And I usually do it more exaggerated, so I'm the one who looks goofy, not them. And then it relaxes them too. So yeah, I don't ask people to do anything that I'm not going to do, as far as just, you know, releasing tension or sort of shaking it out, or, you know, shaking your hips, or you know, relax your jaw. I do things like this, and
which is all the things that we learn in movement and voice classes as an actor, which is fantastic.
And it works, so that's why I do it.
Tell me about the passion for taking pictures. You know, where does that desire come from to capture this image that portrays an individual, and not just them, but their personality and their vibe. Because one of the key things I noticed in your work, you're really good at getting people to bring out their inner self, whether it's the quirkiness or silly or someone serious, like whether someone's a performer or not, you're able to bring that out. Where does that come from?
I've always had a hard time articulating what it is that, because as a photographer, I'm not, the only thing I shoot are people. Like I could not care less about shooting food or objects or things, landscapes. I mean, it's fantastic. People do that and they do it really well, but I've never been particularly interested in that. For me, it's always been about photographing people and sort of capturing a piece of them somehow and almost sort of selfishly taking it for myself. There's something about that, and it's hard for me to articulate, but I've always been drawn to that, and there's something about it I've always really liked. Yeah, that's what it is for me. It's something about the relationship with people and then capturing it and just having sort of an image of someone that's sort of them at their best, I suppose, or yeah, sort of getting the best out of people. And I guess I'm sentimental, so I like the idea of just having that moment in time, because I mean, we all do get old and we all eventually pass, and there's something about just capturing a moment of time of where a person was at that particular point in their life that I don't know, it's always appealed to me.
That's really beautiful. I love that. Are there any particular photographers whose work you admire and you look up to?
Oh yeah, I mean, probably all the names I'll say are pretty what you'd expect me to say. I mean, I love Annie Leibovitz. I love Michael Greco, David LaChapelle, Helmut Newton, Irving Penn, a lot of the big editorial guys that were portrait people that all have a totally different way of getting things out of people, and all have different ways of lighting and all of that. But yeah, a lot of the big fashion portrait photographers from the last century have all been big inspirations to me. And then film too. It's a combination of that and then great filmmakers, because it all kind of goes. Yeah, it all amalgamates to the same thing for me. So and for filmmakers like Martin Scorsese, of course, and Ridley Scott. Christopher Nolan. I mean, the list goes on. Paul Thomas Anderson's probably my favorite, but yeah. So,
are there any particular actors or performers or musicians that you would love to photograph? Because you don't know who is watching this, especially now with social media. We're going to be sharing some of this content online. Is there anyone that you're like, I would love to get them behind my lens?
Oh, well, I mean, I haven't.
In front of my lens, not behind, in front.
I haven't thought about that too much. I mean, I'm happy to get just anybody in front of my lens. I mean, of course, if they're higher profile, it's nice because it's good for marketing purposes, and it's good for your portfolio, obviously, to have names in there. But I don't know if I have any. I mean, I'd love to shoot like a Ricky Gervais or like, a Dave Chappelle or some Bill Burr or some of the, I like stand-up comedy a lot. So, and I have gotten to work with some stand-up comics, and they're definitely among the most fun to shoot. So, and then of course like a Robert De Niro or, somebody like that, of course I'd like to shoot. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we were connecting over is you also lived in London for a while. Tell us about that and what that experience was like in helping shape you up as an artist.
Well, that was 20 years ago now. Gee, yeah, 20 years. I turned 20 in London. I was there for a year. I kind of took a gap year. It was between, I think, doing acting and then doing film production. I went to England, just took a gap year, and Yeah, I just saw a lot of theater when I was there. I went to the West End a lot and tried to see. You could get, I don't know, you could get some really good like last minute deals on theater tickets then. Maybe you still can. I haven't, it's been a while since I've been back. But so yeah, I went and I saw a lot of theater and it was really inspiring for sure. I mean, it definitely cemented that, you know, the only path for me was going to be something in film or theater, you know, something in this sort of medium that I've ended up
in the arts.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I find like definitely with Europe, like when I was living in Paris, one of the things I loved is the architecture and then all the museums and galleries you have.
Yeah, it's all those things.
And then in London, you know, the V&A and National Portrait Gallery.
I went there many times. I went there into the Tate, and yeah, I went many times.
And most of them are at no charge.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I went many times.
That was such a shock. And you're just surrounded by this by yourself. You don't need anyone to even go with. And I remember I went to London by myself and just wandering the galleries. That was my favorite thing. But also all the buildings, the architecture, I super love, like in Europe, and the inspiration, it just hits you. So I'm sure as a photographer, you're a very visual person. So do you think that when you see a subject, when you see a person, that you're able to see them differently than perhaps a normal person would? Like, are you, because you're probably helping bring out their inner light. Because I see, and which you can't see right now on camera, we have all these posters from magazines and people you have photographed. And one of the things that stands out for me is how it's not just like a pose of them, it's something like inside, like a quirk or eccentricity that you're able to pull out of them.
Yeah, I mean,
but that takes an eye, you know, it takes an eye to bring that.
It's just the way I shoot too. It's because I like I say, I shoot fairly quickly, and you know, I'm fairly energetic when I do it. So I wouldn't say I have it's not anything special that I'm doing. It's just years and years of doing it over and over and over again. You just start to instinctively know how to sort of get things out of people. I don't know if I can intellectualize it that well, other than it's just practice. Just work with.
It's a natural gift.
Well, no,
Take
because
the compliment.
it wasn't like that when I started. When I first started, it was slow and awkward. It happened over time. It's just working with thousands of people. You eventually just sort of instinctually know, okay, you know, kind of go this way with this person or that way with that person. And, you know, I think, I'm pretty, I just try to be myself and you know, just be cool and relaxed, and I find that sort of gets the best out of people, you know.
And you're also really good at lighting, because I know the times you photographed me, one of my things has been, you know, getting my skin tone right. Either it's not lit well or over, down, or under. So, you know, that's, you know, I'm not pushing him, but he is really good. So what do you love about living in Vancouver?
Well, Vancouver has just, I mean, I grew up around Vancouver. I grew up, like I say, on Gambier Island, which is just like a 40-minute boat ride from from Falls Creek. So I've been in and out of this city my whole life, and this is sort of my base. This is where all my connections are. So it's just been the city that I know, and it just was a city that made the most sense to sort of start doing what I was doing here. But I mean, yeah, obviously it's nice to live by the ocean. It's nice to have, you know, it's the only place in the country that has mild winters where, you know, you don't have to put on a spacesuit to go outside in January. But yeah, I don't, unless I had a really terrific opportunity somewhere else, I can't really see leaving. I think the only thing that might drive me out eventually is how insanely expensive it is. But yeah, I mean, this is just kind of home. This is kind of what I know. All my friends, all my family are all, you know, in at least the Lower Mainland or the island, you know. So it's sort of just where I've been, and it's what I know. And you know, whenever I go away and I come back, you know, you do appreciate it when you leave and come back, for sure.
And it's definitely like the Hollywood North.
Well, that too. I mean, The only place I could really do what I do would either be here or Toronto, or maybe Montreal, but I don't speak French. And Toronto I did live in for a year, but I prefer living in Vancouver.
Yeah, I love the weather
Toronto's
here.
cool, but yeah, I prefer living in Vancouver for sure.
What advice would you give to aspiring photographers? Because I feel like, I mean, in your industry, and of course in ours, mine and Tiara, my co-producer, camera operator there, in our industry, we have all these people who go to film school or like photography school. From my class, when I went to film school, I'm the only person working in film and TV, which is like,
That's normal.
I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years later.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's starting out?
Well, hone in on what it is that you want to focus on, and just focus on that. Don't spread yourself too thin. I mean, specialize. You got to specialize. And if you can find a thing you're really into, I mean, the cool thing about photography is there's so many different genres of photography. I mean, just about anything you can think of, whether it's travel or fashion or hair or fitness or cars, food, pretty much anything you can shoot, and you can potentially make money shooting it. So if you find the thing you're really into and then just focus on that and be the best at that particular thing, and you will eventually, probably do pretty well with it.
And I guess it helps if you have that particular passion and interest in that subject too, because
you have to, yeah.
You can only take, whatever you can for business for a certain amount of time. We've interviewed like some other photographers like Eric, and he's really into outdoors right now, and all of his work is now wanting to focus on that. It sounds like it's a lot on performers and actors and working in film. So that is a particular interest. So
Right.
the advice you would give is, make sure you're also passionate about what you're doing, because on the days that it's hard, having that desire and passion there will take you to the next level, that you can work those long hours. Because both of us, my longest day on set was like a 19-hour day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, if you're shooting something you're not that passionate about, people are going to kind of figure it out. Mm-hmm. Like, unless you're really good at faking it, but no, you got to shoot what you're into, and you got to be passionate about it, and people can tell. Like, that's one of the reasons I've done fairly well in the sort of world of heavy metal, as niche as it is. I'm really into the music. And the people I know that I work with, they can tell, because I talk about all the bands and, I'm into this and I went to this show and blah, blah, blah. And of course that makes people, they're more likely to want to work with you. And also you just end up putting in more effort, because it's just that much more important to you, beyond just that you're getting a paycheck for it or whatever. I mean, people pick up on your interest level in something, and that makes a big difference. So.
What inspires you in life?
What inspires?
I know it's a big question. What inspires you? Is it a habit? Is it like getting outdoors, watching films?
Like just what are the things I'm passionate about?
Yeah.
Well,
you drive inspiration from?
Well, traveling, my family, music, fitness. I'm a fitness guy. Yeah, I mean, and just the arts in general. I mean, I love going to theater. I love I go to live shows probably weekly at this point. That's a big thing for me, is checking out live music. And yeah, getting outside. I mean, I like getting out on the water, and biking. I mean, lots of things. But photography is number one.
Yeah.
That's
we can
first.
tell with all the
Yeah,
gear.
that is, my main interest is shooting, and that's what I'm passionate about. So, I'm very fortunate that I get to kind of do the thing that
You love.
that I love, and that's all I've ever really wanted to do. So, I don't really want for anything.
So our last question that we like to ask all of our guests: is there a particular spot in Vancouver that you like to go to get inspired? Because the show is Inspired Life Vancouver.
Where do like just a place I'd like to go hang out?
Yeah, or it could be like a hiking spot. It could be a cafe or the gallery, the restaurant, like, a particular spot that you would suggest.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I love going to the Nam, the
Yeah.
vegetarian restaurant on 4th. I've been going there since I was a kid. The Afghan Horseman near the Granville Island. The Commodore.
I love their belly dancers.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember going there.
Yeah, well, and they have the sit on the floor with the on the
Yeah.
cushions.
That's the traditional way that we eat
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
country.
It's a good way to eat. I like eating like that.
Yeah.
And then, the Commodore, I love going to see shows there. And then I love getting up Gross Mountain, doing the Gross Grind. I try to do that a few times a year. I love going up to Chief in Squamish, going out to Harrison Hot Springs. I try to get out there a couple times a year.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much. You heard it right here. If you are inspired, make sure to get in touch with us. Thank you, Shimon, for taking the time and for letting us take over your studio.
Oh, well, thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
My pleasure.